Since November, the SEC has made a statement. Elite teams, dominant performances, and a single conference that no one can match.
SEC could have as many as 13. They could become the first in history to put 80% of their teams in the tournament.
But now, it's time to make some history. We've all got our individual histories.
Kentucky is the king of college basketball.
National championships.
One on the shot clock. Thurman beat it. Oh, he got it. The Gators, as good as it gets.
Final Fours.
Rebounded by Harper. And it's over. Anything can happen in March.
And the Alabama Crimson Tide will roll into the Final Four.
And new program best. But this year, it's time for all of us to do something that no one in college basketball has ever done before. 14 years ago, the Big East made history with 11 teams making the NCAA tournament. But records are made to be shattered. Welcome to the biggest march ever.
Thank you, Zeke. Yes, indeed. It is the biggest march ever in the history of the SEC, a historically great conference with a record-breaking 14 teams in this year's bracket. Welcome to the Madness destination, San Antonio. Today on the show, we're going to break down the bracket with a special focus on, of course, your SEC teams. We'll also give you some focus on who you might need to pay attention to in your bracket as you fill this thing out. Maddie, your opening thoughts here as you see the field.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things being so SEC focused, we're going to have some SEC matchups in this tournament, and it is going to be exhilarating because it's a whole different ballgame once you're in the NCAA tournament. And then also, there's a couple teams surprised about their seeding. So do we have the chance for some major upsets here because some teams were seeded higher than we thought they should be? I think it's something that we're going to get into, and it can get I think it's going to get interesting this year.
I got to say, one thing I'm going to touch on real fast is that the committee this year is not as good as some of the committees in the past. The last 2 years have been a little bit funky, and I don't know what they're looking for exactly, but we'll get into some of that along the way here. But the SEC well represented in this one. We expected 13 teams, ended up getting 14 teams in with Texas. We thought would be sweating it out today. Turns out they were very, very thankful for a trip to Dayton if you're a Texas Longhorn fan. But let's go over those SEC teams that are in the field. You got the Auburn Tigers, also being a number 1 seed, Texas A&M in the field, Ole Miss in the field. You've got also Florida, who was a number 1 seed, Oklahoma making the field in this one, Missouri, Arkansas. Oh boy, we're going to talk about Arkansas's hot corner they got here in a little bit because that is a wild setup they got. Mississippi State. You've also got Alabama, Vanderbilt making the field this year. Georgia took them 10 years, but the drought is over in Athens as Georgia makes it back to the NCAA tournament. We mentioned Texas, Kentucky, the Kentucky Wildcats make the field, and the Tennessee Volunteers end up a 2 seed this season. Well represented in this one. Maddie, your thoughts on the team that we got in, everybody that we got in. What do you think made the committee what did you think happened with the committee putting Texas in? How did they saw it? Because the teams they left out, talking about Indiana and a few others, Ohio State, who actually beat Texas. So kind of your thoughts on Texas sweating it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think just based off of some of the teams that they put in versus some of the ones they left out, they heavily favored some strength of schedule because of all the Q1 opportunities Texas had, how many they actually won. It was mentioned yesterday in one of the broadcasts that Texas had more Q1 wins than most of those combined that were sitting on that bubble. So I think that was one of the big considerations there is, heavily favored in Q1 games as well as, their schedule is a lot harder than some of those other ones that were in consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk a little bit more about the last 4 in, last 4 out in just a second. But yeah, the Q1 and the net being in the 30s definitely, I think, helped push Texas into this field a little bit when you compare it to the rest of the bubble teams, but we'll get into that just a little bit more. SEC well represented, 1 seeds out of Auburn and Florida, 2 seeds out of Tennessee and Alabama. Kentucky gets a 3 seed along the way. It was a pretty strong showing. Let's go over those top 16 seeds in the South region where Auburn's at. They're the number 1 seed overall. And then you've got number 2, Michigan State with Tom Izzo back in March. They had a really good team this year. The number 3 team out in that region, Iowa State, who Auburn actually faced in Maui earlier this season. So a team that the Tigers have already seen in the number 4 seed in the South region, Texas A&M. In the West region, Florida was the number 1 seed. The number 2 seed out there, St. John's and Rick Pitino, Big East champions. Then number 3 seed out in the West region is the Texas Tech Red Raiders quality team. And of course, we talked about JT Toppin and how good of a game he has. And then the 4 seed out there, the Maryland Terrapins, really good team out of the Big Ten this season. In the East region, yep, look who it is. It's the Duke Blue Devils, a team that we certainly expected to be a 1 seed here in the field. And then also joining them in those protected seeds is the 2 seed here, Alabama. This is a tough draw for Alabama. They're going to have a lot of fun, but they've got some favorable matchups along the way too. But the offense corner over there, as they were kind of saying on the selection show, Alabama, the 2 seed out here with Mark Sears, hoping to make another Final Four run this year. And then the 3 seed in this region, Wisconsin, who's coming off a pretty good game, just dropped it late to Michigan there in the Big Ten championship. And then the 4 seed out here, the Arizona Wildcats, who lost to Houston in the Big 12 championship. And let's swing over to the Midwest, where Houston's the number 1 seed, followed by the number 2 seed out there, the Tennessee Volunteers, with Rick Barnes trying to make a run. 2 really good defensive teams, the 1 and 2 seeds out in the Midwest region. 3 seed out here, the Kentucky Wildcats. Tons of offense for Mark Pope. He's going to be facing the Troy Trojans in this first round. That one's going to be a lot of fun. Really interesting game there. And then on top of all of that, the 4 seed here is last year's runner-up, the Purdue Boilermakers. Maddie, thoughts on the top 16? We told people it's not going to be the same top 16, the protected seeds that you saw on the reveal. A lot of the same teams, definitely not the same teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people knew, especially when you look at those 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 is where it got a little bit choppy. I think, they may have paid a little bit more attention to regular season versus tuning into some of those games as we moved into the conference schedule. I think that probably had a lot to do with it, just because we saw some of those 3 and 4 seeds start to lose out early in their conference tournament. So, I mean, most of them we knew were going to be in that top echelon tier, but I think there's a couple that could smell some upset city as we move into next week.
Now, typically you advance the top 3 seeds into the second game. 4 seeds and below, it starts getting a little bit interesting, but late, normally one of them gets beat. So we'll find out where those matchups are at and what the big shocker is going to be in the tournament this year. But yeah, really, really strong field. Let's go to the first 4 and the last 4 here for what was revealed to us on Selection Sunday. So, as we mentioned, the Texas Longhorns make the field in the last 4, and they're having a trip to Dayton. They're joined by Xavier, the Musketeers, out there. San Diego State and North Carolina State will be out there in Dayton as well. So we'll have a huge game between Texas and Xavier in Dayton when this opens up. But the first 4 out, Maddie, I got to say, surprising me that 2 of these teams I felt like would be here. West Virginia gets left out. They were the first team out. And then Indiana, Ohio State, and Boise State. Now, I'll say my piece here. Boise State, while, it was your mid-major spotlight team at the beginning of the year, Maddie, not making the tournament. But I did feel like last night with the Colorado State-Boise State game that it was going to be winner get into the field overall out there in the Mountain West. And then Indiana and Ohio State, I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that Indiana did not make the field. They obviously had the recent head-to-head with Ohio State. They had some really quality wins. I guess it's like Gary Parrish was saying, if you're planning on firing your coach or getting a new coach next season, you probably don't deserve to make the NCAA tournament unless he's retiring. But West Virginia was the big shocker. This was a team with wins over, Gonzaga, Arizona, they also had a win over Kansas. They had some good wins. Meanwhile, North Carolina makes the field with one quad one win on the season, and I believe a Q3 loss. Maddie, if I'm West Virginia, I feel screwed, especially because I don't care that he's saying he wasn't in the room during that. But I can imagine UNC's athletic director saying, "Hey, you guys better put us in," while he exited the door. May have been a conversation going on as well. Your thoughts on what is a massive snub? I'm gonna just be frank. West
Yeah.
Virginia got screwed. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the most talked about thing as we move into the tournament next week is, does UNC deserve to be there, especially, after they lose to a Duke team without their number one player. Um, and even talking to some UNC fans, they considered their season over last week.
Yeah.
So you know, I think it's one of those things that I think something's going to come out of it. I don't think West Virginia is going to go down quietly. I think something's going to be stirred up, especially the fact that the guy who makes all the choices,
Yeah.
it's his team. So
It's just really funky. But out of this, how big and unexpected was this? There were 111 brackets reporting here on Selection Sunday for today, and they had 111 brackets out of 111 brackets picked West Virginia to be in the field today as a 10 seed. Um, that's a shocker. And then also Indiana was picked in 90 out of 111 brackets today. Both those teams were, pretty comfortable. Most bracketologists thought those two should be in. Instead, you get Xavier, who was in 30 brackets, and North Carolina, who was in 27 brackets across the bracketologist reporting. No one thought they would be here. Neither one of those teams. Like most people were like, yeah, there's three teams that get shaky on, and those three teams were Indiana, Texas, and Xavier. Like North Carolina was dead, and brought back to life by the committee on by any means possible. This is one of the worst I've seen. I'm not trying to say anything defamatory, but there's something suspicious going on here.
yeah, I mean, as soon as they announced North Carolina, I was like, well, Texas is done. That they're not going to make
They're
it.
not making it. Texas is done. There's not a chance Texas is making it if North Carolina made the field. Boy, how were we wrong. Like, just absolutely insane on that one. But yeah, I remember us texting back and forth during this, and we're just like, there's no way. There's no way. I was just, as the bracket kept unfolding, as an Arkansas fan, I was sitting there panicking as they were revealing the bottom section. Like I was thinking we were going to be a 10 seed. We were a 10 seed, but I was sitting there going, who did they screw? Like, who did the committee just mess over? And I hope it's not us. Like, as we're getting to the bottom, I'm just starting to sweat. I'm like, you better not. You better not have made us the team that was getting messed over here. Luckily for our conference as a whole, it was none of us who got the raft of we're making sure North Carolina makes the tournament. Wild, wild, wild stuff. But Maddie, let's go through this a little bit more. I just before we go through the bracket here, we do mid-major spotlight. We do pay attention to mid-major basketball a little bit as the year goes on. Just who are your mid-majors that you think we all need to be paying attention to as we're filling out our bracket here?
I mean, I think for me, one of the biggest that is probably not going to be on a lot of radars is going to be Akron. Um, Great team, got in, winning their conference tournament, and they just showed a lot over the last few days in that conference lineup. Arizona, I feel like, has been hit or miss this season, and if they aren't hitting shots, Akron can sneak up on them.
I can see that. Akron's been a very good basketball team this season out there in the MAC. Really good offensive team, like top 70 offense. They might have the potential if they could put a complete game together to get some damage done. Not to mention this team shooting over 36% from three. Very good 3-point shooting team. Some shooters to kind of keep an eye on out there. You also want to talk about a big star in this team, Tavari Johnson. For Akron's a good team to keep your eye on. Yeah, they can cause some damage there as the MAC champions. Seeing that first matchup, a lot of people circling that one right now as a popular pick to beat Arizona. I think for people who are looking for those bracket busters. Team that I'm really interested in is, I think we've talked about them before, but Lipscomb is a team that I'm kind of fascinated with. They have they have a game with Iowa State. I don't know if that's necessarily the game for them, but you're talking about a team that shoots the ball extremely well. Also for Lipscomb, fun team, and they've played Kentucky and Arkansas when they went to Bud Walton. They had a really good game to start the season out and made Arkansas sweat a little bit at home. Dangerous team overall out of the Atlantic Sun. Landed pretty much exactly where I was anticipating them to be, but like this is the 83rd team in Ken Palm. They've played some quality basketball over the year. They shoot 36.7% from three, and they hold opponents to 31% from three shooting. So they do some really good work around the perimeter. I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State's sweating it out a little bit, despite how great defensively that they are. If they get a little bit nervous as that game goes on, but Lipscomb's a possibility. I don't know necessarily if I would pick them to beat Iowa State, but they're one that I'm definitely curious about. And then another one, Drake, of course, is the big talking point this year. You're talking
That
about
was my next one.
really good basketball team. Really good basketball team. One that's got a good defense, a very good defense, and also a solid offensive game as well. And when they play Missouri, that game is gonna be weird. Like whoever controls the tempo might win that basketball game because it is gonna be slow motion versus acceleration the entire game. So whoever wins that battle, that's going to be fascinating, really fascinating between those two. And, two neighboring states right there with Drake and Iowa and everything else. But that's going to be one of the more interesting games out there in the West region. I think Dennis Gates might be sweating that one a little bit, but those are three really good, mid-majors to keep an eye on. When I look at the mid-major top 25, of course, you got the usual suspects on here. UC San Diego is a team that a lot of people are talking up right now. Number one in the top 25, mid-major top 25 is St. Mary's. St. Mary's is in a favorable seed, also as a 7, so I'm not really circling that one too much. Yale is good again this year. We'll see how they fare. And then you've also got Will Wade and McNeese, who always, last year, I believe they busted through last year and went to the second round, but McNeese is very capable of causing some problems. McNeese facing Clemson is going to be an entertaining game there in the first round. But yeah, those are some teams added to the top 10. High Point's another team out of the top 10 in the mid-major top 25. Quality teams to definitely keep your eyes out on. But yeah, fun field, ready to cause some chaos on every direction that you're looking. Maddie, you ready to talk some brackets and some games and some previews?
I am. I'm still just a little bit disappointed that Yale wasn't that 16 seed that
they played too well to be a 16 seed this season. They played entirely too well to be a 16 seed.
How great would that have been?
It would have been really fun. But who knows? Who knows how this thing is going to shake out? There's no way. If Yale makes it to the Sweet 16 and faces Auburn, it'll be entertaining. That's all I got to say. But Texas A&M is going to sweat out Yale for sure. So let's see how that goes. All right, let's jump into some regions here. But before you fill out your bracket, a couple of things to go over first. Only 2 number 1 seeds have ever lost in the first round. The suspects, of course, being Virginia and Purdue. And both those teams happened to make it to the NCAA, ended up making it to the national championship the following year. Something to keep your mind out there as well. Not last year, but the 3 years prior, a 15 seed has beaten a 2, and they did that for 3 straight years. So yeah, normally advance the 2 seed, but it has been known and not totally infrequent that a 15 seed will upset a 2, and then 7 seeds tend to beat 10 seeds a little bit more regularly at close to 60%, and then 9 seeds actually lead the series over 8 seeds all time in the NCAA tournament. Since 2012, a number 5 seed, or the 5 seeds are 25-19 against 12 seeds. There were no upsets in 2023, but of course there were upsets last season. And since 2012, only 4 Final Four teams have ranked outside the top 40 in adjusted defensive efficiency. Alabama joining the club last season as one of those teams on KenPom. And then a top 12 team in the Week 6 AP poll has won the tournament since 2004. That trend continues today. Number 7, normally the number of McDonald's All-Americans in the Final Four has continuously dropped since 2015. Then 5 seeds are the only top 8 seed to have never won the NCAA tournament. And then, of course, 10 of the last 13 national champions have been in the top 4 of the ESPN's BPI. Good things to note there on your bracket. And then also Vegas tends to say when you're looking at it, and it goes straight off from this advice, 2 of your top 3 scorers on a team should be upperclassmen. Your team should rank somewhere in the top 5 in the ESPN BPI. You're looking for a team that hits 36% or better from 3 or ranks in the top 75 in 3-point percentage. And then you're also looking for a team that ranks in the top 25 on KenPom adjusted defensive efficiency. And then, of course, you're looking for proven coaching. So things to keep in mind as we go through the bracket. Let's start, Maddie, in the South region where we find the number 1 overall seed, the Auburn Tigers. Maddie, we're not really going to dive much and guess on between Alabama State and St. Francis, Pennsylvania. But Auburn's got, a good start here with the 16 seed, obviously. You probably just logically advance Auburn ahead. They have had no problem with mid-major competition this season that they've scheduled thus far. I wouldn't anticipate them having issues here again, especially after a playing game. But the 2 teams that they have south of them here in the bracket, they got number 8, Louisville, and number 9, Creighton. Maddie, just kind of your thoughts on those 2 teams. Of course, we're talking about Pat Kelsey and McDermott out here, of course, and quality teams. Louisville's back in action, back in the NCAA tournament. Those fans are pumped up about it. They probably feel like they're a little bit underseeded given the season that they had out there in the ACC, a team that some were kind of think would be a 6 seed, but here they are on the 8 line. They've got a lot of 3-point shooting. They played really well out in the ACC, and then Creighton did great in the Big East, but Ryan Kalkbrenner, their big star on that Blue Jays team. Your thoughts on those as a potential matchup for Auburn in the second round?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen both of these teams play SEC teams earlier this season, and for the most part have, kind of been underclassed when it comes to the SEC. I think Louisville has grown a lot this season, so that's definitely something for Auburn to, not make light of, especially, like you said, a lot of people think they may be underseeded. So I think that's one thing that they need to make sure and remember as they get ready to go into this game, because either Louisville or Creighton, both staples in the NCAA tournament as a historical point, especially with Creighton being one of the front runners in the last few years. So I think, you look at the experience on this team and you look at, coaching as well. Pat Kelsey, fantastic coach. And I think he's somebody that can get in there and do some damage that people aren't expecting. So if, average SEC fan, I would measure Louisville, Creighton somewhere around the Missouri, possibly comparable to a Kentucky team.
I think it's a little high. I don't know. Kentucky, Missouri. I think Missouri and Down's pretty favorable.
Yeah,
like comparison wise.
Which, I mean, we've seen some of those teams upset Auburn, so they may have a fighting chance. But I think they're going to be locked into this tournament, especially after a game of rest.
Well, I will say this. This is my big thing. I think if you're Auburn, I think you would prefer Creighton because they're not exactly the best rebounding team, despite having Ryan Kalkbrenner out there on the court. This is not an elite team when it comes to the boards, but they are the number 2 team in the country in 2-point percentage, like Alabama is. They're not an exceptionally electric team from 3, but they got guys who can shoot on that Creighton team with Stephen Ashworth and then a couple other guards like Neal, and they can put the ball. They can hit some threes. So that's a little bit of a got a good big man, couple of guys who can shoot. I think that might be the shakier of one, or that could possibly be a shaky matchup. Um, but yeah, Louisville underseeded a bit as well here, I feel like. So both those games going to be real. Both those teams could be potentially fascinating second ones, but I would certainly favor Auburn in both those games. But two teams that are very, very proficient offenses overall. Let's slide down the bracket here just a little bit. We'll talk more about the second round for Auburn as when we know who the actual opponent is in this one. So between Louisville and Creighton, Maddie, obviously we're advancing Auburn. Who are we moving after that between Louisville and Creighton? Who do you want to go with? I'll let you pick this one.
I'm gonna go with Louisville.
Okay.
Just because I feel like they're the more efficient team. Like you said, Creighton great in the two range. But like you said, most teams 36% or higher from three. Obviously, the better 3-point shooting team, I think, is going to be the one to advance.
Okay. So let's move on just a little bit here. We got Michigan taking on UC San Diego. The Tritons, a team that a lot of people liked out of the Big West this season. Maddie, we'll go really fast on here. Dusty May's got a really good team with a 14 foot if you stack his guys together, pick and roll happening out of the 4 or 5 spot on this Michigan team. Danny Wolf is an exceptional basketball player, same with Golden. Trey Donaldson, former Auburn point guard on this team as well. What are you thinking here between these two? I know a lot of people are going to be picking San Diego as an upset 12.
Yeah, I think if they were in a different position or even a different portion of the bracket at a 12-5 matchup, they would have a very, very good chance of moving on. But this Michigan team is just phenomenal. And I don't see anybody on UC San Diego that is able to match up with that pick and roll threat with Wolf there on the Wolverines.
No, I'm actually with you. I'm not going with the grain here. I know a lot of people like San Diego. They're going to talk about it a lot. I also really like Michigan here. So I'm going to move Michigan on. I'm with you. So we go to our next SEC matchup here. Texas A&M taking on the Yale Bulldogs. Maddie, we know who A&M is. Exceptional rebounding team and everything else. And an offense that has one of the worst effective field goal percentages in the country. Everything just in red on KenPom. If you click on Texas A&M, it's actually pretty funny. But here you are against the Yale team that can light up the floor at 38.5% from three. And then they're not bad from two as well. And then not a great defense, but an all right defense for Yale. What are you thinking here between the Aggies and Yale?
I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think it's, kind of goes with the way we've talked about Texas A&M all season. It's going to be gritty basketball. It's going to be a lot of rebounding. And I have a feeling we're going to end up at the foul line a lot in this game just because of how physical Texas A&M is. And I don't think Yale's kind of used to that competition. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. Like you said, Yale, they can get hot from the floor. I think the way Texas A&M needs to go around that is to play elite defense. Don't even let them get the shot up to be able to get the rebound. I know that's, their MO, get every rebound, but make sure you don't have to get one. Be effective on defense, be able to get back in transition and make some points, because if you let Yale get shooting on you, it may not end well.
And yeah, the thing is for me, like Maddie, they haven't lost a game by double digits this season at all. And that's not just mid-majors that they played. I'm talking the Purdue Boilermakers played this team, and they lost by 8, just right there in this game. They also played Minnesota on the road, and Minnesota lost by 3. And then UTEP on the road loses by 1. Rhode Island, they lose by 6. Delaware, who was in the championship game in the CAA, they lose by 6. And that one on the road, they only lost 1 conference game. That's to rival Harvard. There were high stakes in that one. They only lost that one by 5. This team is good, a really good team, and like one that I'm kind of like, I know they did it last year, so it's gonna be trendy to pick as well. But like, I know they don't have the same dudes, but when you're talking about Mbing, you're talking about Townsend, Alton, like you got good players and just depth at that number 2 spot with Casey Simmons, Trevin Mullen, and Riley Fox, and guys that's going down here. But they have a pretty consistent lineup here. Isaac Salazar, and Nick Townsend are going to be the two guys in the front court who kind of mix in different positions overall. A lot of time on the court for Nick Townsend in either spot. He spends 41% of the time over his last 5 games at the power forward position, and then 46% of his time at the center spot, mixing it up with Samson Altman. And then you're talking about guys with 120 offensive ratings. Like you got Townsend's one of them. Plakidis is another one. I hope I'm pronouncing these names right because I'm sorry if I'm messing these guys up. It's not like I've heard ESPN tell them in my ear a bunch of times. And then Elton, 23.1 offensive rating. And then Salazar also 27.1%. This is an offensive team that plays good defense, plays decent defense. So I see it. I can see it. So if I was to advance a team, oh man, Gale's good. Ken Palm's got this game going to Texas A&M, however, 75-67 at 78%. Maddie, do you like Texas A&M enough to advance them over Yale?
I mean, I like them in the tournament style. If this were a regular basketball game, I feel like it would be a lot more questionable. But just knowing Buzz, knowing how this team plays when it's on the line, that's really the only reason I'm going A&M in this one.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. Yellow's got some seniors and juniors in that backcourt running this team. Give me Yale. I kind of like Yale. I don't know. Like, that's going to be my first upset pick here down this line. I kind of like Yale shooting that 38%. If they could spread Texas A&M out, I think that's one on upset alert here. Sorry, Aggies. It's just not one that seems exceptionally favorable to y'all. But yeah, I think Yale would be the team that I would be most interested in being an upset here in the South region. Let's go to Ole Miss, and they'll have a game against the winner of the matchup in Dayton between San Diego State and North Carolina. Maddie, we don't know who that winner is going to be, but I feel confident in picking Ole Miss to advance and against either one of these teams overall. We'll jump into it later after Dayton. We might come back and talk about it a little bit more, but Ole Miss has had a good defense. They're a good three-point shooting team. North Carolina's beaten nobody, and San Diego State, as coming out of the Mountain West, is a quality basketball team and has historically played well. Just not a team that I think is to the past when you think about the Final Four team that San Diego State had a few years ago. You disagree or disagree with me on that one?
I mean, I agree with you on that one. I think they've got some players who you put the pieces together could have the potential in a scenario where Ole Miss doesn't show up to play. But like I said, it's a tournament. They're going to show up. But like you said, either one of these teams, North Carolina, we're shocked they're even in the tournament, so I wouldn't advance them anyway. And then San Diego State, like I said, just not that complete team that I think would be able to match up well against the Rebels.
They are an awesome defensive team. I mean, you're talking about a team that only allows 45.3% in effective field goals. This team beat Houston earlier this season. They beat Boise State in conference. They also beat the conference champions, New Mexico. This is a good basketball team. They beat Creighton earlier this year. San Diego State is a good team. It would be the team I expect with that defense to be facing Ole Miss, but their offense is 111th in the country, and their three-point shooting is under 33%, which is below the national average of three-point shooting teams. Ole Miss is a much better offense than that with a comparable defense. So I would be advancing Ole Miss over whoever wins that whoever wins that first 4 game there. So let's slide down to the bracket here. Iowa State versus Lipscomb. I know I like Lipscomb. It's one to watch if you're looking for a big upset game, but I would advance Iowa State. Exceptional defense, and their offense has gotten a lot better this year. The guard play is really good for Iowa State. As we run through the bracket and whoever they might be facing next, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But Iowa State is the team I'd be advancing over Lipscomb. Maddie, you agree with that?
Yep, I'm good with that one as well.
Yeah, I just think it's an unfortunate matchup for Lipscomb because this team could be one of those teams that could upset somebody. Marquette and New Mexico. Shaka Smart's got the team, and they got Cam Jones who can hoop out there for Marquette, but they have been trending in the wrong direction here since January. New Mexico, Mountain West champions, good basketball team. Of course, coached by Rick Pitino's son out there. Lobos are really, really good. I think this one's a toss up. I'll just go don't bet against the Patino in March, and I'll just move to Mexico forward. Maddie, what do you got?
You know what? I agree with you on that. If Marquette was doing something a little bit different,
Trending
maybe,
better, yeah.
you know, I'd say Marquette all day. But like I said, I'm sure Rick and his son have talked about this. He's gonna help him game plan.
I mean, just throwing it out there. I mean, we could look at the Ken Palm one just to break that a little bit, but like, I like New Mexico. I just think that's who it's going to be in between there. But Ken Palm's got that one 61% going to Marquette, but Mexico's pretty good. But we'll see. We'll see. It's year two. They made the tournament last year. They got some guys with some tournament experience. And this team made it without JT Toppin this season. So just below them, Michigan State and Bryant. Look, I know I like to pick a 15 seed over a two and try to figure out which one. Don't bet against Tom Izzo. That's my advice in this one. And honestly, I hate that Auburn's in this bracket with Michigan State. Is Tom Izzo is overdue to make the Final Four, and I really hate it for Auburn because Tom Izzo's got a squad at Michigan State this year. So I'm going to be sweating this one out. That's going to be high interest in Atlanta when we get there because, like I said, Tom Izzo is massively overdue to make the Final Four. But yeah, we'll see. I'm advancing Michigan State there. Maddie, any doubt on Bryant?
Nope. Like I
Okay.
said, no doubt for Tom Izzo. He's got that first game at least on lock.
So we did a couple of different things. Louisville, a team that can spread you out. They're five-man. Noah Waterman's a guy who can shoot. Chucky Hepburn. They got guys there in Louisville who can play. A lot of variety in that team. We'll go through it more as we go round by round and preview that next matchup, depending on who Auburn should face in this next game. But you advanced Louisville, right? That was your pick. Okay. If you would you take in this one, Auburn or Louisville?
Give me Auburn. I'm not as high on them after a couple of rough games late in the season, but I think they can still beat at mid tier team.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, Louisville's good. I wouldn't call them mid-tier. They were in the best part, they were a good one. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm with you. I'm advancing Auburn into the Sweet 16 as well. Bruce Pearl gets off that skid that he's been on it, missing the Sweet 16 since 2019. And then we have Michigan taking on Yale. I kind of like the storyline of Danny Wolf here, facing his old team in Yale, where he upset Auburn last year. I would take Michigan against Yale, but Maddie, what do you like better, Danny Wolf on that Yale team facing Auburn in the Sweet 16, or do you like Yale facing Auburn in the Sweet 16?
I mean, if Danny Wolf was still rolling with the Bulldogs, I think we could have a very interesting conversation about the aspect that Auburn could possibly be play that Yale team again. But without Danny Wolf, I have a feeling they probably aren't making it past the Wolverines.
Okay, so you're advancing Michigan like I'm kind of thinking here. Yeah. So we got Michigan, Auburn here in the Sweet 16. Don't tell me the committee doesn't have a sense of humor. Because like look what they did. Look what they did. Like they give you a chance here to see Yale or Michigan to face Auburn in the Sweet 16. Like that's funny. Like that is some deep humor right there. We got Ole Miss, I think, who we advance versus the Iowa State Cyclones. This would be a tremendous basketball game. Honestly, they would take a heck of a coaching job by Chris Beard to get through that one. When you talk about TJ Otzelberger out there at Iowa State, having one of his best seasons, but they've been a little shakier here at the end of the year, losing to BYU twice. Oklahoma State was the ugly loss that Iowa State took, and then lost to Houston as well. They lost three straight earlier this year in January when we got into February with Arizona, Kansas State, and Kansas. But you're talking about a team that shoots 35.8% from three, just under that magical 36% we're looking for. Decent from two at 55.1%. Converts at the free throw line at over 75%. Top 10 defense, top 20 offense for Iowa State. That would be tough facing. That would be a lot to face off for this Ole Miss team. Maddie, any thoughts there?
Yeah, it really just depends for me how Ole Miss is going to shoot in this basketball game. Because we've seen them have games where their, numbers are lower than expected. And I think that's going to be the determining factor. If Ole Miss is kind of running and gunning, getting up shots, I think we could see them move on here. But if they let that Iowa State defense,
They're really good at jumping passing lanes, but Ole Miss has done a really good job of protecting the ball this season, and that's to me where that whole game would come down to is who wins, the team that does not turn over the ball or the team that's going to turn you over. Like that's the whole conversation between those two. So I think that's one of the tougher games to call if that is the matchup. I'll go Iowa State just because I think Iowa State's good. And they just happened to put this through, but I think you could flip a coin and still, who knows how many times that it would work out for you there. So we got New Mexico facing Michigan State. Maddie, I like Tom Izzo, so we could talk about that one if you want, but we we're
give me Izzo.
focused on the SEC teams more than anything else. Don't bet against Tom Izzo. That's all I got to say. So moving Izzo into the Sweet 16. Sweet 16, we've got Auburn and Michigan. Maddie, are you going with the upset here in the 14-foot combination of Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf, or are you thinking that Dylan Cardwell and Janai Broome would lock that down and we come down to the backcourts in this game?
I think this is going to be a very close game if it happens, and it's going to be one of those that are going to have some heads turning, going to have some brackets possibly busted. But man, I don't want to push Auburn this far just because I feel like their track record in the tournament tells me not to. The last few years, but they're just hard to pick against this season. I'm gonna go Auburn in that one, but I think it'll be a very, very close game when it comes down to it.
So last time these two faced, Danny Wolf, when he faced Auburn, went through 13 points, and then he had 1 3 made in the game, goes 4 for 5 at the free throw line, grabbed 5 rebounds in the game, and had 3 assists. He had put up 13 points in his matchup there with Janai Broome. And then you also talk about that combination back then that Auburn had Jalen Williams at the 4 spot. So. I think with a better partner there in the front court, Danny Wolf might be even doing more this season. Danny Wolf's a really good basketball player, and he's NBA level, just like Janai Broome is. It would be fascinating to see who gets the better of whom in that game. I'm like you. I'm taking Auburn though. Like I just think the guard play would make the difference overall, and they've got a very good defensive backcourt there in Auburn. I think it's a backcourt that's a little bit better than Michigan's backcourt. Like I love Michigan's front court. Their backcourt, I think, is just not quite as good defensively as Auburn's backcourt. So as much as I love this storyline, I got Auburn going to the Elite Eight. The other Sweet 16 game we have, Maddie, we have Iowa State taking on Michigan State. Maddie, I'm telling you, I'm taking Tom Izzo. So,
I was gonna say, give me Izzo. Give me
so
Izzo.
it's an easy conversation there. Let's just kind of talk about that one. I just saw that was a pretty popular one the entire time we were talking about. This would be a matchup if it was Auburn and Michigan State in the Elite Eight between two top 10 KenPom teams. So just right on track there when you talk about what you're wanting to see. The only thing is this Michigan State team, the one thing they are bad at is 3-point shooting. 30.8% overall 3-point shooting team, but you're talking about a team that's good at the free throw line, a team that is good on getting twos and plays lockdown, solid defense, has a top 5 defense in the country and one that does not allow their opponents to score much at all. They hold their opponents to 46.1% effective field goal percentage. This would be tough for Auburn because like that's kind of the combination that teams like Florida, who's not a great 3-point, they're better than Michigan State, but not an elite 3-point shooting team. Tennessee, who's a little bit rougher on the 3-point shooting, but a lockdown defense. Both those teams had lockdown defenses. Duke, really lockdown defensive team. We saw Arkansas, who's a top 20 defensive team, play really well when they went into Neville. Maddie, who do you like more in this one? This is kind of that combination that Auburn's had difficulty dealing with this season, but they're just not that great from outside. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I like Michigan State to be able to get an edge on this game. one of the main factors in my head as I think through that is that this is where Auburn tends to run out of steam. You take these several games in a row, especially if you're going to have that game against a hard fought Michigan team like we're assuming is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a feeling that they are going to be gassed in this Michigan State game.
I also think Michigan State, despite the 3-point shooting, has a really darn good backcourt. When you talk about Jaden Atkins, Trey Holloman, and then Jeremiah Fears' brother. Yeah, they've got some dudes who can play in that backcourt. All of them very capable. And then Carson Cooper, he's got some size on him, 250, 6'11", and then Zapala is 7 foot, 245. They get some guys with some size out there in that combination, depending on how they want to move it around. Michigan State's a good team. It's just all going to come down to, in my mind, the ability and the ability to shoot for Michigan State. And Auburn's been more consistent at that, but they're not a high volume 3-point shooting team like Alabama. Jace Richardson's another player to keep your eye out for on this team. But yeah, it's too bad we don't have Kim Palm to kind of break it down apart for us here, but that's a tough game. It's a really tough game, and I think that's almost a coin flip, and it's going to be a battle for Auburn to get into the Final Four here. Auburn's been the more consistent team. For the sake of the show, I'll move Auburn on, but like I said, Tom Izzo's seriously overdue to make the Final Four given historical trends.
Mhm.
All right, Maddie, let's move on into the West region where we have 4 SEC teams sitting in the number 1 seed, of course, is Florida. We'll do the same thing here in this Norfolk State game for the Gators pretty much. I think we all expect Florida to end up winning that game. In fact, Kim Palm's got it 89-64 against Norfolk at 99%. A lot of momentum right now for the Gators as well, but keep your eyes out for Chris Fields, who's the go-to guy for Norfolk, Christian Ings as well. Yeah, guys, kind of just note here over the last 5 games for Norfolk State, according to Kim Palm, but the Gators got this one. So let's just slide down to the 8-9 matchup where we can see the committee kind of breaking traditional rules here. Be given the amount of SEC teams here in the field. Oklahoma is your 9 seed as they face current national champions fighting to defend the title from an 8 seed spot, the UConn Huskies. Maddie, Dan Hurley is a heck of a coach, but this has been a rockier season than what we've seen in the past. Your kind of thoughts on this matchup between UConn and Oklahoma?
We always talk about it. Experience wins in March, and Dan Hurley's been there a time or two in the last couple of years. So, I have a feeling that Dan Hurley is going to pull something out and be able to take on this Oklahoma Sooners team, especially, being on the road. We don't see Oklahoma shoot as well, and I have a feeling that he is going to have them locked down at Jeremiah Fears, and that is not usually a recipe for success there for the Sooners.
Yeah, so UConn's got a lot of the guys back from last year's team as well. They just don't have, like Klingon on this team this year. This is really Alex Caravan's team for this UConn team. But Solo Ball's here. Liam McNeely is on this team as well. Daria is there, and then Aiden Mahaney is on. Was the big transfer that they added for this team. They got a capable team. Everything about them screams that this team should be better than where they're seated. They just didn't perform like it this season, just honestly. And they had this rough stretch in Maui that really cost them right out the gate. And then they took a loss to Nova to start Big East play this season after they beat DePaul and Providence and Butler. They just, occasionally just kept stubbing themselves in the foot. And then St. John's had their number. It was just not Dan Hurley's year in the Big East. One thing to note is that the 3-point defense, though, for UConn has not been exceptional. This team allows well above the national average on 3-point percentage to their opponents, 35.1%. That's one of the problems with this UConn team is teams can shoot on them. And what is Oklahoma kind of do well. They're a shooting team. So that's what's making this one very interesting all day long. You're talking about an Oklahoma team that shoots 35% from three, and then is also a team that gets to the free throw line a lot on their drives, getting from two. Jeremiah Fears is a big time player. We all love him. Future NBA basketball player. Jalen Moore, Duke Miles, Kobe Elvis, Sam Godwin's been out. But yeah, Bryson Goodine's a really good shooter too. You got options and from three different spots, just like UConn's got. And this team does the one thing that UConn does not do, particularly well on defense. So your kind of thoughts there.
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting matchup. I think it's going to be one of those games that pace is going to have a lot to do with it because they can get Oklahoma kind of off their game and in an awkward position. But like you said, if Oklahoma can get in their spots and hit some 3-point shots, we may be seeing an SEC matchup in round two.
Could be. I've got a feeling that that's definitely a possibility, but the area to watch out for, in my opinion, is going to be the offensive glass, where UConn has been a very good team this season on the offensive glass. That's been Oklahoma's weakness. And then how well does Oklahoma shoot in this game from three? By the way, don't UConn fans, if you're cash checking this show out, Jeremiah Fears is not the guy you need to worry about from three. It's all the other guards. Jeremiah Fears is more of a mid-range specialist, and he's like 30% from three. Not the most consistent guy, but those are the areas to watch. How well is Oklahoma hitting from three? And then can UConn take over the boards? Kim Palm's got this game going to UConn 76-75 at 52%. Maddie, it's a coin flip. Who are you going with?
You know what? Just to keep it interesting for the sake of the show, give me the Sooners finding their spots and getting some shots.
The 9 seed traditionally, like I said, has been beating the 8 seed. So I'm kind of like you. It would just really hurt Dan Hurley to have this season where the Huskies don't advance. But I'm not putting anything past Dan Hurley. But I'm like you. I think logically you got to take a 9 somewhere in this mix, and we passed on the 9 in the first bracket. So I'm going to go the Sooners as well. They've been also extremely battle tested by the SEC this season. Maddie, do I even have to ask you who you're picking between Memphis, who's got a ton of really good players there in their backcourt, and a red hot Colorado State team, I might add, who just got done winning the Mountain West. But you just want to pick your favorite team? Is that what you're going to do?
Let me go dig my Penny Hardaways out of the closet, put them on for this game because I'm going with the Tigers all day. I mean, they struggled against UAB, which makes me a little concerned. Um, but I think Penny's going to get it done in the tournament.
All right, so you're advancing Memphis in this one. My brother last night told me do not give up on his Grand Canyon Lopes, as they'll be taking on the Maryland Terrapins. Last season, of course, Grand Canyon ended up facing Alabama in the round of 32 and they advanced. Maddie, any thoughts on this game as an upset one? Kim Pop's got an 82-68 at 90% going to Maryland in this one. Maryland's got some good players like Derek Queen and Julian Reese for them. And then, of course, Grand Canyon. Not quite the same team as last year, as so many teams are. But you look at Grant Foster, Coles, Williams, Harrison, good players on this Grand Canyon team. What do you think? Do you like Grand Canyon being a 13 to upset of 4?
Grand Canyon's one of those teams that I think if they were seeded a little bit higher, maybe in a 11 or 12 seed, depending on the matchup, they are definitely in a spot for an upset. But Maryland's just playing great basketball, especially coming into the end of the season. So I wouldn't pick the Lopes here, but I feel like Maryland's got the edge on them in this round.
Now, I'll tell you this is that Grand Canyon turns over the ball. They're the 271st team in the country when it comes over to turnover percentage. And they don't shoot the three particularly well. Those are just things that I don't think are going to help you when you're facing the number 6 defense in the country. And then also a team who's top 40 in getting the ball turned over. So, or turning other teams over at 20.2%. I like Maryland here. I know my brother's over here. It's like you can doubt the Lopes all you want to. Proud alumni of Grand Canyon University, but I'm gonna take Maryland in this one. Maddie, this is the interesting one we were pointing out earlier. Missouri taking on Drake. I mean, we were kind of talking about it a couple of weeks ago when the SEC when he did our SEC tournament preview. We were talking about like, Drake's that team that you just kind of need to watch out for. They're scary, and then they've taken on this Missouri team that is the complete opposite of them. We're talking about a team that has a 68.2 tempo versus Drake, who's a team who averages 58 possessions a game. Very slow, great defense on Drake, and a good offense. Middle of the pack defense for Missouri with a sensational offense for them, and is going to try to shoot a ton of threes. Meanwhile, I mean, Drake doesn't allow anybody to score. What are you thinking here? Kempom's got it 71-65.
I mean, we looked at this game, and the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "Holy cow! Drake only allows 58.4 points per game in their opponents against Missouri, who shoots the lights out of the gym." So, like you said, this is going to be a polar opposite game that is going to depend heavily on pace. I think when you look across some of the things that concern me for Mizzou in this one is even though Mark Mitchell's expected after that kind of scuffle and that knee injury, how dominant is he going to be? Is he full 100% healthy, or are we going to need to watch out for him? Because if he doesn't have as much playing time in this game, I think that is what's going to hurt Mizzou.
I definitely think the front court's going to be a significant portion of this because when you look at the rebounding for Drake, they are an excellent rebounding team. 36% offensive rebound percentage. That's 17th in the country. And then they're shutting down other teams rebounding top 24 in the country. And like, make no mistake, this team beat Vanderbilt earlier this season. This is the team that ended up winning that Charleston Classic. Very good basketball team. The losses they took were to the second best team in the our conference that they're in, and that's Bradley. And then Murray State and Illinois, Chicago were kind of the outliers, but they did not take a loss to a single team outside the top 200. But the thing is that KenPom has got this game 71-65 at 72% going to Missouri. I really like Drake. I really do. This is one of the more curious games that I think is going to be here. I think Drake's going to be a popular pick, and it does make sense. I'm gonna go Missouri just because I just don't think I just don't think there's gonna be the same amount of upsets for SEC teams in the first two rounds as like there were last season. So I'm gonna go Missouri advancing here because they've shown us that they can beat anybody when they've with a lot of teams they've played this season. Maddie, your thoughts?
I'm gonna go with Drake on this one. It's kind of one of those coin flip games more so for me. Because like I said, it depends on the status of Mark Mitchell and it depends on how well they are shooting the basketball. But like I said, whoever controls the pace in this game, I think is going to be the winner. So we'll see who gets out, and is it going to be Mizzou running, or is Drake going to slow them down and make them set up?
Fair enough. All right. So the next game that we have underneath here is Texas Tech with JT Toppin, who has just been excellent at the 5 spot for the Red Raiders this season, taking on UNC Wilmington, the Seahawks. Maddie, I like Texas Tech a lot. We've seen Texas Tech drop games that they shouldn't have lost this season, so it would not be just the world's biggest surprise if they ended up dropping one. But I think they're better than UNC Wilmington, and I think it's logical to advance them. Especially because KenPom's got that game also 81-66 at 91% going into this one. I'm advancing Texas Tech. What are you doing? What are you thinking here?
Yeah, give me Texas Tech on this one. And then obviously it'll make for a better matchup in the next round too.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is one of the most interesting corners that I think the committee has put together when we come down here and we talk about Kansas versus Arkansas. These two had an exhibition game at the beginning of the season in Bud Walton Arena. Arkansas ended up winning that exhibition game. Now, granted, it's an exhibition game, so take what you will from it. But Arkansas looked excellent, and that's what part of the momentum that you were talking about. We were talking about earlier in the season, and we didn't think things were going to be that bad. But overall, this is probably one of the more compelling matchups of the tournament because here in this corner you have Bill Self John Calipari and Rick Pitino all in the same corner in trash cans. Like that's the joy of this Western bottom corner here of the bracket. I'll start this out on the Kim Palm portion of it, then we'll talk about it. They've got this game going to Kansas 73-69 at 64%. We've seen Arkansas beat Kim Palm a couple of times here late in the season. But what I find fascinating about all three of the teams that are going to be the most favored to get out of here in some order, is that all three of them, some varying degree on their level of offense, all of them are really good defensive teams. And then Omaha is the complete opposite of all of them. A quality offensive team for a mid-major with some questionable defense at times. But they like to beat the crap out of trash cans as well. So hide the trash cans for the Omaha Mavericks. Maddie, let's talk about this Arkansas-Kansas game. What are your thoughts?
I really, really like this draw for Arkansas because you can talk about the Ken Palm numbers all day long, but to go back in the history of Arkansas against Kansas in the tournament, and it
One of the
looks
biggest wins of recent history.
And then, not to mention Ken Palm isn't going to factor in the fact that Boogie Fland is back. Everyone from reports saying that he looks good. I don't think he'll start, but it's going to
They
be
have depth. This is depth. That's one of the big concerns with Arkansas is depth. Yeah.
Exactly. And Adu Thero still unknown, looking like he's probably not going to be ready for that first game. But still, like I said, better than a 7-man roster, and we've seen them win some games they weren't supposed to with a 7-man roster. Kansas just isn't the Kansas Jayhawks that we thought they were going to be this season. And I think part of that seeding was because they're Bill Self and the Kansas Jayhawks.
Well, they're a tough defensive team. I mean, you're talking about a team that has the number 18 2-point defense and the number 36 3-point defense, which has been the shaky part for Arkansas is that 3-point shooting this season. You're happy you get Boogie Flam back, who was your best 3-point shooter on this team. We'll see how much time he gets, but Calipari's definitely got to figure an arrangement that doesn't disrupt the flow they've got going on right now with DJ Wagner at point and Nelly Davis at the 2. You cannot go back to what you were doing because this is way more successful. You need to find a way to put Boogie in this, in this system with Arkansas the way that's successful. I think that you take him off the bench. I think you put him on the bench and he comes in and he plays the 1 or he plays the 2, but you don't slide your guards. I don't think you move Nelly Davis back to the 3. I think you come in and who needs a break? Who needs a moment here? Who can give me a little bit more in this situation? Who's the better specialist? So I think that's the way you play it is that you plug Boogie where you need to plug Boogie in. But I start DJ Wagner and I start Nelly Davis right now for the Razorbacks. That's my opinion. So personally there, I would love to see Adu Thero come into this one because he guarded Hunter Dickinson last year in the Champions Classic at Kentucky while they were out all their big men last season. We saw him do a pretty good job defensively on Hunter Dickinson. I really wish they had Adu Thero back because that would be incredibly entertaining. But you have really good defense from Jonas Adu, who's been playing good ball lately, that you can match up on Hunter Dickinson. And then KJ Adams is kind of the X factor overall for this team. But KJ Adams for Kansas this season has been not the highest usage guy in the world, only seeing 67% of their minutes this season. And then touches on possession, he's on the lower end, 16.1% for this team. So overall, that 4 spot, you really wish you had to do Thero. I would kind of see what you could work. If Carter Knox could take on KJ Adams and then see how you want to match up with Rylan Griffin, the Alabama transfer to this Kansas team. That's going to be one of your big shooters that you need to take care of business on against Kansas. But you got to find how you're going to shut down who, make sure Kansas stays cold offensively. And then how are you going to crank your offense up? Because you got a top 20 defense also. And I think that's going to be disruptive for Kansas's offense. I think this is a heck of a basketball game. Certainly a heck of a basketball game. Maddie, who are you taking this one, Arkansas or Kansas?
Woo, pig, suey.
Oh my gosh, you're so hyped up for this. I'm going to go against you. I'm going to go Kansas in this one. I think they're a good team. I really do. And yeah, that's just what I'm going to vibe with right now. Everybody boo me. All right. So the next one, St. John's taking on Omaha. Thing is with Rick Pitino's team is that I'm not impressed offensively for them, and they played in a weak Big East conference. I know a lot of people are not going to like me saying that, if you're especially a St. John's fan, but I am not as impressed with St. John's as the national media, and especially the funny thing is I wanted to play St. John's as Arkansas. This is the draw I kind of wanted, so we'll see how this two game goes. But I would advance St. John's, but they're just not that impressive to me offensively as a team. When you look at St. John's, you're talking about the number 65 offense in the country and a team that shoots 30%, 30.4% from three, 338th in the country. They're really good in the mid range. But also a team that's 51.5% from two this season as well. So I don't have a lot of confidence in here in March. I know the defense will travel. I know the defense will be good, but I think there's good teams even in here. I don't know if St. John's is getting out of their region, out of their first two games with somebody. So especially run into a team that's got it put together offensively. But that defense is locked down, and if they advance to Sweet 16, it'll be off that defense for St. John's. Let's just run through it real fast, Maddie. Florida's in it. Florida or Oklahoma advancing to Sweet 16. We've talked about it a billion times for them.
Yeah. Give me the Gators.
Two teams we're into be familiar with, so I'm going to go Florida as well. Memphis or Maryland?
After the way Memphis struggled today, I would take Maryland.
Okay, we'll stick with that. We were split on Missouri and Drake, so we'll just do the SEC defaults here. I think the disruption for Texas A&M with JT Toppin on a few other pieces for this team. Texas Tech to me is just a monster opponent to deal with. And then you're talking about good guards out there with Elijah Hawkins, Christian Anderson, and then Walton as well with this Texas Tech team. I'm going to rock Texas Tech and that really good defense that they have that's also accompanied by a good offense over Missouri to advance to the Sweet 16. And then finally, St. John's or Kansas. Maddie, you like Bill Self or Rick Pitino?
Ooh, this is a hard one to pick because I feel
we went two different ways on this. So to be fair, so I'll advance Arkansas for you if you want to talk Arkansas, if you want to pick Arkansas and St. John's.
I mean, Arkansas St. John's, I feel like is a completely different basketball game than Kansas St. John's. I feel like if Arkansas continues, that is the window they continue at, is just playing elite defense and actually getting someone.
It'll be a defensive fight between those two teams. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'd be like that Tennessee Auburn game where they didn't get out of the 50s. But if you're looking Kansas St. John's, I would take Kansas in that one. Like I said, I don't think St. John's getting out of the region just based off of some of the roadblocks they have in front of them.
Here's the thing. So, for Arkansas fans, names to know if you do happen to face St. John's, and I'm one of you, so this is names that you need to know. RJ Lewis, good player there at the number 4 spot. That's going to be your big concern. If you don't have a Duthera or not, is how you match up with him. Athletic number 4 guy, 6'7", 215. Then Kadari Richmond's going to be your big problem in the backcourt. Excellent player. And then Zuby El-Jabbar also is another one that you're going to have to keep an eye out for at the number 5 spot. I think Adu is going to have his hands full on the defensive end. Really good offensive big man. Z is going to have about 5 inches on him, though, if you do have Z out there. So it would depend on how tough that Z is playing that defensive end in that one for a big body 5-man. I think Arkansas St. John's would be a super fascinating game should it happen. We'll see. Like I said, I think it's almost a coin flip between Arkansas and Kansas. So whichever team faces them, you're going to have 2 Hall of Fame coaches facing off in the second round, more than likely in the West region. All right, so Maddie, Florida, Maryland, who are you advancing in that one?
Give me the Gators. I just think that they are a complete basketball team, and the more I've seen them play, the more I think they're going to make a deep run in March.
They're a quality basketball team. I would also go with the Gators. Again, players to know if you're a Gators fan: Derek Queen, Jacoby Gillespie, Julian Reese, Rodney Rice, and Sultan Miguel. are players that you definitely need to keep an eye on for this Maryland team. Also, a team that plays, it's kind of like the Gators, it's just not quite as good offensively overall, but a better 3-point shooting team than Florida. So there could be a potential upset brewing here if Florida is not playing good defense, but we've seen them on the other end. This Maryland team kind of plays like Auburn with a moderato tempo, not anything that's going to, set the world on fire faster than Auburn, though. And then also very proficient from three as well. So keep that in mind. I think that's a very compelling matchup and a tough Sweet 16 game for Florida. But Florida's trending in the right direction, so I'm with you, Maddie. And then there at the bottom, St. John's. Did we say St. John's is who we're advancing in that one?
I'm not sure if we ever came to a conclusion on that. Just I said if Kansas is up against St. John's, I'm taking Kansas. Arkansas, St. John's. I don't think I made a pick because I don't want to. It's going to be a terrible
Let's just
game.
put St. John's there, and then we'll just talk to Arkansas fans about Texas Tech a little bit, and they could keep it in mind because the thing is with Arkansas, like they could lose the first game and they can make it to the Sweet 16 with the straw.
Yeah.
Like, they can figure out any way that they're going here. I feel like, but yeah, Texas Tech, like I said, players you need to keep an eye out for: JT Toppin, Elijah Hawkins. Those are the two big ones. Rewind, listen to the Missouri one if you want more detail when we were talking about Texas Tech, Missouri as a potential matchup as well. All right, so that gets us our Sweet 16. Maddie, will this St. John's or Texas Tech? Pick one of the two.
Give me Texas Tech in that one.
I
Like you
think
said,
Texas
I feel
Tech's a
like,
lot better offensively, yeah.
yeah, that offensive side is going to get them the win in that game.
Okay, so we got Texas Tech, Florida in the Elite Eight. Obviously, you got a heck of a front court and versus a phenomenal front court player with Texas Tech. Good shooting all around the court. This would be one of the most fascinating games in the Elite Eight. Maddie, if I was going to pick a team between these two, I like the depth for Florida a little bit more than Texas Tech because they got dude after dude after dude. And eventually, Texas Tech is going to have to rest JT Toppin, and I don't know if they have the same kind of depth in that front court that Florida does.
Yeah, I think that's the big advantage of Florida here. Like you said, the depth. You've got so many games against so many elite teams. They're going to get more rest throughout the tournament than I think any other team is going to because of the fact that they've got so many options. And I
Yep.
think that is what you're going to look at here. So I would take Florida over Texas Tech for sure.
All right. Sounds good. Let's go to the East region where we have three SEC teams in the East region. We have way too many teams to be doing a show like this, don't we? But let's start it out here. Duke's your number one overall seed. They've got one of those matchups where they're going to be facing American or Mount St. Mary's. I think we're all moving Duke forward. We'll see. I don't think the health of Cooper Flag is going to particularly matter in that 1 versus 16 game unless we see the upset of the century. Also, Duke very consistently gets to the Elite Eight or the Final Four when they're in one seed. So we'll just go ahead and move Duke on to the round of 32, where we have our first matchup, Mississippi State and Baylor, that we're diving into. Maddie, State had fooled me for like just 10 seconds there and made me believe that this team was about to turn the corner when they pummeled LSU in the SEC tournament. They played good, just not good enough against Missouri. They're late, and now they're going to play Baylor here on this 8-9 game. A Baylor team with the number 16 offense in the country and a really good defense overall. But this is going to be a tough one and just another game where you're just going, wow, good grief, this is going to be hard to pick these two teams apart. Your thought between these two, Scott Drew versus Chris Jans?
I feel like these two teams match up really well together. I think what Mississippi State is going to be looking for is Cam Matthews to make a contribution inside. I think if they're going to win this basketball game, that's where they're going to win it. You're going to have Cam Matthews and Nwako going to have to big body some Baylor Bears.
Yeah, they're going to have to because Norchad Omier is going to be out there, who's been good. Jalen Celestine, Langston Love, who can also mix in at the 4 spot. Yeah, the front court has not been the biggest thing though. So like, I think Norchad Omier is really good. I think it's going to be a fascinating matchup between him and Murphy down low. And then, yeah, I think Cam Matthews is going to be your X factor in this one. And then how well is Josh Hubbard shooting? Yeah, how well is Josh Hubbard shooting would be the rest because BJ Edgecombe, he's going to get it out there and he's going to be playing some ball. Jeremy Roach also going to be a significant contributor for this Baylor team. Jaden Nunn, another good one as well. You have a ton of good guards on this Baylor team, and I think there's a lot of depth in that portion. And you're talking about a team that has shot 51.5% effective field goal percentage, right about the same that Mississippi State does. Kim Palm's got this game 74-73 at 52% going to Baylor. Maddie, again, the 9 seed normally wins, so who are you taking?
I mean, as much as I have thought Mississippi State was going to give us one of the best seasons that they've had, I think Baylor wins this one just because of how inconsistent we've seen Mississippi State over the last few games.
I'll split the odds. I'll go Mississippi State.
Okay.
We picked a 9 in the last region, so I'll go Mississippi State here to advance them. Baylor's also been trending in a weird direction, so I just they haven't beaten anybody at of significant note since they beat West Virginia, who should be in the tournament. Before that, it was Kansas back on February 1st. They've actually struggled against Arizona, Colorado, Cincinnati. A lot of teams who were in the fight late out of the Big 12 to make the tournament, whereas Mississippi State has beaten Texas A&M. They've beaten Ole Miss. They've beaten Georgia in that same time frame. So I think just a little bit better. Mississippi State's playing a little bit better overall, and then got washed their mouth out a little bit with that LSU game in the SEC tournament. So I'll take Mississippi State. Let's see if they put it together overall in that one. Oregon versus Liberty. There's a lot of talk about Liberty out there. Maddie, do you like Dana Altman to get through with the mix in the defense, or do you like the very proficient offense that Liberty plays with?
Yeah, I think I like the Ducks to kind of break that proficient offense up a little bit. Little heavy on the defensive side for Oregon, so I think this is a great matchup for them.
Oh, it's a fascinating one. If you're looking for a 12 to upset a 5, this just seems like a good one to take a look at. Have we picked one yet? Have we picked a 12 beating a 5 yet? Because
I don't think we have
we had Colorado State. Yeah, no, we haven't yet. Um
one.
I'll go. I'll do it. I'll take Liberty.
Okay.
I'll take Liberty. I'll take Liberty. Actually, like this one's super tight on KenPom. 72-65 at 65%. Like, yeah, this is what you're looking for. Yeah, Nate Biddle's really good. He's going to be difficult to deal with having that 7-footer out there, and same with Bamba. For Oregon, but like for Zach Cleveland, let's see what Zach Cleveland can do, man. Caden Matheny, like, let's see what happens here. They got some guards. Colin Porter's pretty is decent as well. Like, this is a very proficient offense. Liberty is the number 80 team in the country with a proficient offense, but they play at a pace that's 284th. So if Liberty can control the game, Liberty's got a chance. And I remember picking Liberty a few years ago. They've got a team who's a team and a coach who's capable of doing this. So that's the one thing. The only thing is don't expect a lot of rebounds from Liberty. Not going to grab a ton of boards. 361st in the country when it comes to offensive rebounds. All right, let's move on. Keep it going here. Maddie, I'll let you pick this one since you were talking about Akron earlier. Do you like Arizona to come through, or do you like Akron?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen Akron play all that much, and the games that I've watched Arizona play haven't been super impressive to me. I love a good upset, so I'm trending on the Akron side, but also Arizona's a solid basketball team, and I just don't know if we can see Akron get around them.
Yeah, Arizona's done some weird things this year. Honestly, like they're that team where I'm like, they're good. They also make me want to, question them quite here and there on how good they are. So I mean, this is a 22-12 team that's had losses to, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, West Virginia, UCLA. Nothing to be concerned about. They've also had to sweat it out against some of these teams too. But normally they don't play with their food with Stanford and Central Michigan either. So yeah, I'm kind of like you. I'm feeling Arizona to beat Akron as much as I like an upset story. BYU, who is red hot, taking on VCU, who hasn't beaten a team in the tournament, but has some outstanding proficiency numbers. Maddie, do you like BYU or do you like VCU in this game?
I like BYU in this one, just because I feel like the way that they are set up is going to edge out VCU. I just think, their offensive style matches up well against the defense, and they're going to get some open shots and some good looks to win out this basketball game.
Did you just pick VCU to beat BYU? Is that what you said? Or did you say the other way
No,
around? I might get my
BYU.
acronyms messed up, but I'm not hearing well now.
BYU. Give me.
BYU. BYU. Hey, look, Kevin Young is having an awesome first season as he's coming from the NBA now to replace Mark Pope at BYU. And I mean, like, you got to be feeling good if you're a Cougars fan out there in Provo. You have another offensive team that's exceptional. 11th in the country, 123 offensive efficiency. Like, that's outstanding. 57.2%, seventh in the country in effective field goal percentage. The one thing that this team has a problem with is their 3-point defense. They allowed teams to shoot pretty well. In the 240s out there on 3-point percentage. But like, yeah, that would be my big thing. And then they just don't tend to get to the free throw line well enough and convert from there. For VCU though, they're an average free throw shooting team and an average 3-point shooting team. To me, this just screams. I know what Kim Pom says, but this just screams BYU should win this game. 74-73 at 54%. Maybe the computer's smarter than me. But I'm like you, Manny. I'm taking BYU in this one. I just don't think it's going to be that close. Sometimes there's computer trickers out there. I think VCU is one of them. All right, so we got Wisconsin versus Montana. I like Montana. I really do. I think they're a proficient basketball team. The only problem is that I also think Wisconsin's more than capable of beating Montana as well. So Maddie, just going with this one. Kim Pom's got that game going 85-67 at 94%. Going to Wisconsin. I'm taking Wisconsin. You?
Yeah, I'm going with Wisconsin as well on that one.
It's going to be a big thing. The biggest thing is you need to, if you're Wisconsin, keep Montana from driving. 57.3% from the interior this season. And they're a good 3-point shooting, too. All around, good defense needs to be played when you're taking on the Grizzlies. If you're looking for an upset, keep an eye out for Montana. But I've liked where direction Wisconsin's gone here of late, coming out of the Big Ten tournament. St. Mary's and Vanderbilt. This one's an interesting one, Maddie. Normally there are things that I'm kind of concerned when it comes about Vanderbilt, like their undersized front court. One thing, though, that people are going to kind of notice is that St. Mary's rebounds the crap out of the basketball. They're the number 2 offensive rebounding team in the country. And then they back that up with a lot of interior blocks. They're 21st at 7.2 blocks per game. And then they also turn you over a lot at 8.1 steals per game. The thing is that with them denying all those rebounds, they don't have the 3-point shooting that you're necessarily looking for with a lot of teams. What do you think here between Vanderbilt and St. Mary's?
I feel like this is not the matchup that Vanderbilt wanted because I think St. Mary's is going to be able to outlast them. You talked about the fact that St. Mary's is good at making teams turn the ball over. Vanderbilt doesn't take care of the ball as well as they need to. 9.8 turnovers per game. I think St. Mary's, you get in there, let them get offensive boards, and this game could go south for Vandy real quick.
Yeah, but not to mention, you got a 7'1" guy in Harry Wassels, and then Mitchell Saxon at 6'10", who's going to be taken up there. Paulus Marakauskas is going to be also seeing 57% of the front court time as well. Their guards are going to see a lot of minutes. They don't go particularly deep into any kind of bench. Augustus Maracolius, I can't even pronounce it, and I'm going to stop right now when it comes to that one. Jordan Ross and Luke Barrett, they don't go particularly deep in their backcourt. This is a team that plays about 4 dudes in their backcourt, and that's how they're going to rock it. Same thing in their front court. You're going to see about 7 players on this team. Vanderbilt's going to use a lot more depth in this Vanderbilt team, but the one area you're not going to see Vanderbilt go as deep is going to be in the front court. You're going to be relying on Tyler Nickel, and you're going to be relying on Jalen Carey and Devin McLaughlin for Vanderbilt. It's on those guys, I feel like, for Vanderbilt to have a chance in this game. They got to own the glass and play bigger than what they are. Then you got to have really good games from A.J. Hogard, Tyler Tanner, and Chris Mannion. And, of course, Jason Edwards has to be your go-to guy for Vanderbilt as well. Ken Pom's got it going 71-67 at 66% going to St. Mary's. I hate to say it, Commodore fans, but I'm glad you're in the tournament this year. This is a bad draw. I'll just go St. Mary's. Maddie?
Yeah, I'm going St. Mary's as well on that one.
Maddie, do you particularly think that there's any chance that Robert Morris is going to upset Alabama in the first round of this tournament?
No,
We
no,
just
no.
don't believe in the 15 seeds like we used to, Maddie. We just don't believe like the first year of the show we were picking all the 15 seeds to beat the twos like jerks.
Yeah, but they weren't going up against this year's Alabama Crimson Tide team. The team that's got good offense, not as good as last year, but better defense than last year. And they went to the Final Four.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Another thing is to also note as well. This Robert Morris team may or may not turn over the basketball a lot. And I just feel like that's asking for it when you talk about Mark Sears and a few other guys who are kind of trying to be disruptive. And then you got some big dudes down there like Cliff Amore. Yeah, let's go ahead and advance Alabama as Kim Palm's got him picked 92-72 at 97%. Yeah, so obviously Robert Morris, no, Alabama. We advance Alabama here to the second round. All right, Maddie, let's go to round two. So Duke and Mississippi State. Let's just introduce Duke to Mississippi State fans if they have been paying attention. This is the number one team in Ken Palm. Number 3 offense in the country, number 4 defense in the country. All around look like a pretty darn good basketball team. And of course, they got this guy named Cooper Flagg, exceptional basketball player who's been in the race for Player of the Year with Janai Broome all season. Colin Knipple is his Robin to Cooper Flagg's Batman as the go-to guy to a significant contributor. Caleb Foster also excellent in this backcourt for Duke, and then Sion James, another one, and Therese Proctor. They've got dudes. They go about 30 deep at each position. Very loaded team, and some good front court players as well. We talk about Mason Gillis, Malik Brown, Common, Kamen, however you pronounce it. Sorry, Duke fans. But yeah, loaded up in the front court as well all around. This is a good basketball team that shoots 37.7% from deep, holds opponents to under 31% shooting. They're the number 8 team in the country when it comes to 2-point percentage, and they shoot 78% from the free throw line. Quality Duke team. Quality Duke team. They may or may not have Cooper Flagg for the game with Mississippi State. See when it comes
I
up.
think they will. I think they said he should be
Should
good
be
for the
back.
first game. Wouldn't surprise me if they just sit him to let him rest another game and then he makes his first appearance against this Mississippi State team.
Yeah, there's some. Yeah, so timetable is that Cooper Flagg may be getting back for this game. There's some. I've heard talk about like they may sit him for the first round of the NCAA tournament since they're playing a 16 seed, then bring him out for the next game after that. But yeah, that would be a heck of a matchup for Mississippi State. And Maddie, I'm just going to throw one stat out here that you love. State does not allow a ton of free throws, but State's also just not doing a good job converting from the free throw line, it seems like this season.
Yeah. That's the one thing that drives me nuts because why are you with an IELTS getting paid to play basketball, but you can't make a wide open shot?
Got to convert the free throws. And when you're playing a team that's good at shooting free throws, good at shooting threes, good at shooting twos, can rebound the basketball, and is good on offense and defense, I'm advancing that team all day long. I know that they're led by a freshman. However, just I'm going Duke in that one in that advancement. Okay, so did we go Liberty or did we go Oregon in the last one, or did we split?
I think we went Oregon.
Okay.
Or we may have split. I can't remember what your
I think we split. I split. Yeah. So I think we split the last one. Let's just go ahead and let's talk Arizona, Oregon. Here would be a return of the Pac-12. Thing is that like Dana Altman, really good, missed out of the Sweet 16 last season. I'm going to advance Oregon because historical trend says to advance a top 12 team in the Week 6A poll, AP poll. Historically, it is at least the Sweet 16. I'm just going to follow historically trends on this one. Maddie, your thoughts?
Yeah, give me Oregon as well on that one.
Okay, so we got Oregon advancing to the Sweet 16 should they survive the Liberty Flames in that first game. That's going to be the tough thing right there if you're looking for an upset again. All right, so both these teams might get upset in the first round. We'll see. BYU taking on Wisconsin. Maddie, oof, that's a compelling one. I think we're going to go split on this one, but Wisconsin, more than capable team, number 13 offense in the country, number 27 defense in the country. Gotta love BYU and BYU's offense, and they're a really good shooting team. 11th offense of the country, number 68 defense. Maddie, who you going with between those two?
This one's a hard one because you don't know how well teams are going to shoot. Numbers at home can vary a ton. The numbers on the road, especially in a high pressure situation. I'm going to go Wisconsin's defense to stop the BYU Cougars. So give me Wisconsin moving on in that
We'll
one.
rock your pick. I would go BYU just personally. I think Kevin Young gets to the Sweet 16, but we'll rock Wisconsin. I could see it going either way. So we got St. Mary's taking on Alabama. St. Mary's likes to get those same blue collar points that Alabama's after all the time.
Mhm.
West Coast Conference champions taking on Alabama in this one. Man, this is a tough game to pick apart, honestly. But the shooting for Alabama is kind of what comes to question to me and how much improved that defense is. Like I said, we just did an analysis on St. Mary's. Alabama fans rewind for it since we were talking about them for Vanderbilt. But yeah, I think the biggest secret in this one is that you want to get out and run if you're Alabama and you need to convert your threes overall. And that would be this just seems like a tough, sneaky matchup if you end up drawing St. Mary's in that second round. And I think it's one that Alabama fans could be sweating out.
Yeah. I agree with you there. Like we said, St. Mary's likes to turn over the basketball. Alabama, they
They've
make a
got a
lot
problem
of
at times. They've had the issue at times.
questionable passes sometimes. So I could see that getting them into trouble. Um, but I like the shooters for Alabama in this game.
Yeah, I'll advance Alabama. They've shown me enough to make me want to keep advancing them. And Nate Oates was really good last season in March, so yeah, we'll advance Alabama here into the Sweet 16. I think they're a good enough sweet team for a Sweet 16 run. All right, so we got Duke taking on Oregon. Definitely like Duke better than this. Go ahead and again, historical trends
Yep.
also say move Duke forward. Very good chance of making the Elite Eight or the Final Four. Now, granted, that's K, not John Shire, but they were in the Elite Eight last season as well. All right, so we got Duke there in the Elite Eight, and then it comes down to Alabama, or we went with Wisconsin because you picked Wisconsin, correct?
Yep.
Yep. All right, Alabama or Wisconsin. Yeah, there you got some really good players on Wisconsin. I just want to throw that out there since we're doing a lineup here. Should this be the matchup? They've got some depth anywhere that you look on this team. And the biggest player that you're going to be taking note of is going to be John Tanji, who's seeing he's a major contributor for this team. He's seeing 26% of possessions. He's taking 26% of the shots on the possessions he touches the ball, and he's got an offensive rating over 120. That's the kind of player that you're looking out for Alabama when you're looking at somebody who's going to be super disruptive. And then they got tons of depth with Max Klesmit, Kamari McGee, John Blackwell, really good backcourt all the way around. Stephen Kroll, 7-footer, Nolan Winter, 6'11". Also, that's going to be your matchup for Grant Nelson, and then Cliff Amori as well in the front court. This one's going to be this would be the toughest thing, but I tend to think this is where the Tide's run comes to an end. I think Wisconsin's got the better defense. I would advance Wisconsin personally.
I'm
Alabama's
thinking
look
the
better.
same. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking
I
that
think this
same
is a
line as you,
coin flip
David.
though. I don't want Alabama fans to get it confused. I just think Wisconsin's just edges them out a little bit, but like Alabama is more than capable of winning that basketball game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna rock it. I'm gonna go, yeah. Wisconsin's who my pick would be. I got Wisconsin Duke here. And this one, I would like Alabama to win personally if I was to pick a team here because I think they match up well with Duke.
Yeah.
So with the experience that they have. So I would, depending on who wins that game, depends on to me who goes to the Final Four because I think Alabama could go back to the Final Four if they end up in the final game with Duke. That's just my personal opinion. So we'll just see how far Alabama gets through this one. I think they got a tough matchup incoming in the Sweet 16. BYU Alabama would be a scoring fest and
Yeah.
one that would be a ton of fun to watch. I think that's the one that Alabama fans would be more favorable in facing because it's similar to Kentucky. It'd be similar to a Kentucky game and one that I think Alabama wins the track meet in. So I think that's the better matchup out of the two. And then we see what happens with Duke, who gets Duke. I would pick Alabama over Duke If it's
Yep.
this scenario, I go Duke.
Yep. I agree with that one. I think Alabama could edge them out. If, they get to that point, I take that head-to-head matchup against Cooper Flag all day and give that mantra freshman get a freshman because Alabama, I feel like, would make Cooper Flag mess up a little bit.
It's good. It's a crazy matchup. All right, let's go to our last bracket here, the Midwest region. I just keep wanting to speed this thing up just a little bit here. We're talking too slow, but we got Houston as the number one seed over here, where we have four SEC teams. So before we talk about any of the set in stone games, we got to talk about Texas going up against Xavier and Dayton in this one. Again, Texas, a bit of a surprise making the NCAA tournament here, but these teams are ranked 43rd and 44th in KenPom right now. And it is airtight between the two of them, 76-75 on KenPom. Going to Xavier at 50%, so just a couple of decimal points. This is a coin flip game between the two of them. Xavier, number 44 defense, number 52 offense. Xavier also got Zach Fremantle as their major contributor on this team, Ryan Conwell, and then Davon McKnight on this team as part of your group of players that you need to be looking out for. Fremantle going to be the big guy up there. Of course, that's where Texas's biggest weaknesses have been all this season, has been in the front court. You're going to be relying on Trey Johnson a lot to produce some points, I feel like, in this one. Maddie, this is going to be a front court versus back court kind of game and two completely different styles of game. Personally, I've seen better results from Texas as the season goes on.
Yeah.
The one thing we haven't talked about is this Xavier team shoots 38.8% from three. They are on fire when they get it going from deep. And that to me spells trouble for Texas.
Yeah, the one thing that you touched on was backcourt versus front court, but I have been liking the games of Shedrick and Kaluma lately for Texas, and I think putting them into this situation, they are going to play their hearts out. And I like that matchup better and better the more I see them play and the more, they have been taking over basketball games from the front court.
Yeah, here's one thing to note is that if you're looking for an area for Texas to exploit, which maybe they haven't been the best at, but Xavier's horrible at, offensive rebounds. On the offensive glass, Xavier is 317th in the country, and they allow teams in the they 300 they are 317th in the country when it comes to their offensive rebounds, and then they don't provide a ton of rim protection, only 11.3% or 11.3 blocks, 321st in the country in that department. Little bit there. Texas has been a little bit statistically wise in the front court there. So if you're looking for an area to exploit, that's where Texas needs to take advantage. They're not anywhere elite on the offensive glass. You've liked to play a Shedrick. This is where he steps up and he can have that moment. And then Trey Johnson needs to be extremely proficient from the field when it comes to facing Texas and facing Xavier. I'll rock it. Let's just move Texas into playing Illinois there. So Houston at SIUE. Congratulations to SIUE for making their first ever trip to the NCAA tournament. It's going to be very short. Enjoy Houston's defense. You're going to hate it. And then Gonzaga taking on the Georgia Bulldogs. Maddie, thoughts on this game? This is one of the big ones.
I mean, talk about a big game for Georgia. First trip to the tournament in a long
time. 10 years. The drought's over. The longest drought in the SEC is now over.
But Georgia might have a bit of momentum here. Looking over this Gonzaga team, their defense is a little bit weaker, I feel like, than Georgia's. Georgia has an edge in playing these top-tier teams, as we've seen 14 out of 16 in the tournament. And I like the front court in this one. Obviously, we could talk about Asa Newell all day. I feel like he can take over against this Gonzaga team.
They have one. Gonzaga's beaten St. Mary's, but have beaten no other team in the tournament this season. Just take that Baylor. Baylor in the first game of the year when they looked like they were the best team in the country and has since played awful. They've lost to West Virginia, Kentucky, UConn, UCLA, Oregon State, Santa Clara, St. Mary's twice in the regular season. They didn't beat them until the third time these two teams face. a lot of people have talked about Gonzaga being a computer tricker. And when you talk about the field that they faced in conference play, outside of San Francisco and St. Mary's, not a lot of quality competition. I don't think the 69% that's hanging out here with Gonzaga is something to just hang out and just buy Ken Palm's buy on this. I'm kind of thinking that you got a computer tricker here. You got a 9 seed Georgia that is played in a much more difficult league than Gonzaga. And the SEC has shown that, they're more than capable of producing tournament quality teams this year. Not to mention this Gonzaga team lost to a Kentucky team that Georgia beat this season. I'll just go ahead. I'll take Georgia in this one. If the front court can have a good, or the back court can have a good defensive and offensive game, I think that Georgia could be proficient enough to beat Gonzaga, which the computers love them, everything else. But I think Georgia's got the pieces that they need to advance to round of 32.
Yep, I agree with that.
All right, we've got Will Wade taking on Clemson in this one. We'll just go real fast. If you're looking for an upset, always pick, Will Wade's not a bad pick at McNeese. I don't know if I fully trust Clemson. Clemson's a good basketball team, though. So we'll take for chalk and everything else's sake. Clemson, keep an eye on that in your 12-5 games. That's one that's going to be really close. High Point makes its first appearance in the NCAA tournament, taking on last year's runner-up, Purdue. This is a tough one. We'll keep it chalk here, though, on this one. Well, Braden Smith, a lot of good players on this team. Big Ten's got a really good reputation this year. But let's keep it moving. Move Purdue on to go 5. Just pay attention to that one. Now we got Illinois, Texas to talk about if this should be the matchup. Let's talk about this Illinois team really fast. We'll have no computer data to go off of here. But with Illinois, we're talking about a team that's top 20 in KenPom, has beaten a lot of tournament quality teams this season. A team that the only area they seem to struggle is from 3, even though they destroyed Arkansas from 3 in that game that they had on Thanksgiving, which is just ironic. But they've been a very offensively heavy team, 15th in offensive proficiency this season. Big guys to worry about here are Kalen Boswell, I can never pronounce it. You know who I'm talking about, Maddie, right? Do you know how to pronounce? Like, I've heard his name before too, but he's going to be an NBA draft pick. Kaparis Jakanowski, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Something like that.
It's something like that. Kid can play ball. That's what you need to know about him. And with him, do what?
Conus, I think.
Conus? Conus is that?
Conus.
Jaconis. Okay.
I'm trying to write.
It looks like Jaconis. It looks like it could be Jaconis. But yeah, Will Riley also in combination, Trey White, and then Big Z's brother Tomislav Izovic. Good guy to keep an eye on there. There's some NBA quality players on this Illinois team. I would be taking Illinois to advance in this game over Texas there in the second round, and then we wait to see what the folks in Austin do with Rodney Terry. And then we got Kentucky taking on Troy. Maddie, your thoughts in that game between these two?
Another kind of mid-major team, Troy, that I think would have the opportunity to advance if they didn't get the matchup that they have. I think one of the things for Kentucky is Lamont Butler going to be present and playing for this game? If he is, give me Kentucky all day long.
Yeah, I would still stick Kentucky all day long unless Troy can make this super scrappy. That's going to be the big thing. If they can turn it into a fist fight instead of a basketball game, Troy's more than capable of winning that basketball game. Another thing is that Kentucky doesn't do an exceptional job with turning teams over this season. 341st in the country and turning their opponents over. Troy's been a team that's turned over the ball a lot. Well, without Lamont Butler, I can just kind of see Troy taking care of the basketball 1 or 2 possessions better. So this might be a game that's a little more just, oh man. But the thing with Troy is not an excellent 3-point shooting team. So I don't think you're going to have to worry about a Jack Golke situation if you're Kentucky in this particular 3 versus 14 matchup. So I'll trust the computer here. I'm with it. I'm going Kentucky moving on into the second round. UCLA versus Utah State, Maddie. Mick Cronin's had a heck of a year with him traveling across the country out there in the Big 12. Any thoughts before we just pick a winner?
I think this is going to be an interesting 7-10 matchup. I think it's going to be one that really could go either way. I think we see a bit of a coin flip in this one.
Yeah, I can see Utah State winning this one. Computers got it 76-72. Really good basketball game. Winner gets Tennessee in this one. But yeah, I'll keep it consistent and I'll go UCLA with the computer. What do you think?
It sounds good to me.
Yeah, just keep your eyes on that one. That's another really good 7-10 matchup. Um, does a 15 beat a 2, Maddie? Does a 15 beat a 2?
Not Tennessee.
Not Tennessee, not this year with this excellent defense that Tennessee's got.
No.
Okay, well, offensive consistency is going to be the big thing here. You're talking about a Wofford team that shoots a little bit better from three than the national average, and then 2.54.6%. The problem with Wofford is that they do not have a good defense at all. So I think we're going to see that consistency from Tennessee. But a couple players to know: Corey Tripp, Kyler Falwich, and then Dylan Bailey are going to be the names that you need to know for this Wofford team here in round one. Tennessee all day long, moving on one on, and we'll talk about them facing UCLA. Let's go through the second matchup here. Maddie, that if Houston and Georgia face off, I can see this being a really interesting game because you're talking about two great defenses and two teams that rebound very, very well. Of course, the problem is that Houston, this is probably the best offensive team they've ever had. They shoot almost 40% from three, which was nothing like last year's team, and the guard play is exceptional for Houston. It would take a Silence Dimery and Blue Cane, it would take an exceptional effort for them to beat Houston. Your thoughts?
Yep. Sorry, Georgia. I'm glad you made it back to the tournament, but sorry that your run is going to be so short.
Round of 32. Round of
Yep.
32. Mike White has got an ever improving team. So if he made it to the round of 32, it's a good place to leave off the year. Come back next year. Let's go make the Sweet 16 or Elite Eight. Probably the battle cry for Georgia. But yeah, names to know. If you're going to stop these guys, these are the names you need to know in their games. LJ Cryer, Milos Uzan, Jawan Roberts, Emmanuel Sharp, Joseph Tugler. Yeah, good team. Houston, they stacked in every position, especially in that four spot, all the way down to Mercy Miller. This is a team I really like to see what they can do. And then they played Houston played Auburn and Alabama earlier in the season and lost. This Houston team got better since those matchups earlier in the season, and they're a lot scarier than what we originally faced off. So advancing Houston to Sweet 16. Maddie, we went Clemson for chop's sake. Purdue versus Clemson would be an outstanding basketball game. I'll just advance the higher seed here with Braden Smith and the team that Purdue's got overall in that zoom action they like to run. I think they'll be a little bit better offensively than Clemson. I'll be moving them into the Sweet 16. Agree or disagree?
I agree with that one. I think Purdue's a more complete team and more consistent team that I think we see show up a little bit higher than Clemson.
Okay, so we got Illinois, Kentucky here in the round of 32. Maddie, your thoughts here?
I mean, we always say Illinois is the best team that cannot shoot.
No, that's
And
Indiana. You're confusing
Indiana.
you're
My
confusing
bad.
your slender states that border vertically slender states that border Kentucky.
Okay. But give me Kentucky in that one. I still think they are the better shooting team overall, especially if we see Lamont Butler. I just, that increase of defense and the phenomenal offense, I think is going to be hard for Illinois to fight past.
Got to stop them. Got to stop them from driving the basketball. That's going to be the biggest thing. Kalen Boswell and these other guys, you cannot let them drive. Yeah, they've had a rough time shooting from three this season. It's been ugly. Not quite to what we expected, overall. At the beginning of the year, they were on fire shooting from three. That's the only reason I had to correct you. But you also can't foul them, which we've seen Kentucky struggle at times to also defend without fouling. This is a team that shoots 76% just about from the free throw line. Capable team, a lot of big men. This wouldn't be a tough one overall. Yeah, so I'll go with you. I'll advance Kentucky to the Sweet 16, but they got a heck of a fight in store if they end up facing Illinois there in that second round. UCLA or Tennessee, Maddie? I'll name a couple of names for folks to know on this UCLA team if this is the matchup that we end up getting on Mick Cronin's squad. You're going to have Eric Daly, Kobe Johnson, Dylan Andrews, guys to keep your eyes out for. Sky Clark, Sebastian Mack, and then Tyler B. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Like, I know I've heard the name before. Again, I'm not going to embarrass myself any further than what I do on these pronunciations. It just gets bad to begin with. One thing to note on UCLA's got a proficient offense. It's top 40. They got a top 17 defense, kind of similar built to Tennessee. Tennessee's just kind of that next notch up. Good 3-point shooting, not great 3-point shooting like Tennessee. The biggest thing here, UCLA struggled at the free throw line at times. They shoot under the national average.
Yeah, and in the last game, well, not the last game we saw Tennessee play, um, but I texted you during that Tennessee Auburn matchup of free throws win basketball games.
Oh, the Auburn Tennessee game, yeah.
Yeah. And I just feel like Tennessee's a more complete team here.
Yeah, I think they got the star power in the backcourt and a couple of guys, and they're just if you're not going to shoot well, at least you can still get to the foul line, which you do a decent job of. You can convert from the foul line, and then you don't let other teams get to the foul line. So Tennessee, I just could kind of see it. Yeah, I got Rick Barnes advancing to the Sweet 16 here, or getting through to the Sweet 16. So our Sweet 16 right now, Houston, Purdue. We'll see how that matchup goes, but all day long, if that's it, I don't think anybody on the north side of the bracket is getting through. I got Houston going to the Elite Eight all day long. Then we got Kentucky and Tennessee. Kentucky's beaten Tennessee twice this season. Maddie, do they do it for a third time here in the Sweet 16?
I want to say no. I really want to say no. Based off of numbers, absolutely no. But the fact that this has gone on so many times and Tennessee hasn't been able to overcome Kentucky is wild to me.
Well, we got Mark Pope and then regular season Rick here in the Sweet 16. So already I'm a little worried. So either way. You can pick these. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. It really is, and we know how good Tennessee is because they keep showing us how good they are, and then they do something dumb, like not be able to shoot a three to save their lives, which we've seen in a couple of games now against Kentucky. I'll go Mark Pope in Kentucky, but boy, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think, Maddie? I just feel like either way, you can't go wrong.
My head says Tennessee, but my gut says don't pick Tennessee.
Yeah, I know that's exactly what my head told me. It's like, don't pick Tennessee, pick Kentucky. It's like, but it's 3 times in a row.
Let's move Kentucky on just for chance sake because
We got Mark Pope having a heck of a season here right now in the championship game. So let's just rock it. Houston or Kentucky. I'm going Houston all day long. That
I
defense
was
is
about to
outstanding.
say
40% from three, and then they play at their pace and slow Kentucky down. And that jump cut defense that they work on, I don't even see them getting into the zoom action. Like it would be just I would be incredibly. That's the worst matchup possible for Kentucky in the Elite Eight.
yeah, I don't see Kentucky even sniffing the coattails of Houston.
No, those are two completely different teams.
It's going to be a massacre.
I think Houston's a bad matchup, a more consistent team. Yeah, I don't mean to insult Kentucky, but that would be the worst case scenario. If you would be very happy we made it to the Elite Eight. Dang it, we played. That would be especially if you don't have Lamont Butler. So I've got Houston advancing to the Final Four. No insult meant for Kentucky. I just think it's a super bad matchup and a team that's got amazing numbers and players, and that keeps playing has gotten better and better every month of the season. So, got Houston moving into the Final Four. All right, Maddie, that makes our Final Four. Man, we got a little chalky here. We got Auburn a 1 seed, Florida a 1 seed, Duke a 1 seed, and then Houston a 1. That's not going to be it at all. There's going to be some 3s and 2s. I don't know how we ended up here. But that's so chalky, it's ridiculous.
These are just that good.
There's going to be someone who gets in. I can see Tennessee doing it if they beat Kentucky, and then the defense is really good, and they can see them winning a rock fight with Houston. That might work. Like that could be it because they could slow down that 3-point shooting defense. There's a couple of teams, Texas Tech. Maybe one to keep your eye out for. It's curious. I think it'd be tight. I think Florida still gets out of the West region. As we mentioned, I think Alabama is a super good matchup for Duke. So if Alabama were to get to face Duke in the Final Four, I think that's going to be it. But for our Final Four, it is all the one seeds. So out of these one seeds, let's just instead of saying this is our Final Four in our bracket because we'll end up filling out two completely different brackets together later. Um, who do you like best to win the national championship out of these four teams? I will
Man,
tell you now that historic trends say that Auburn has our big board. Auburn has a perfect score.
yeah, I if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago, would have
You
said
said
Auburn
Auburn, wouldn't you?
100%. But Florida looks like a complete team. Houston looks like a complete team. I think it's going to be, like I said, a rock fight between the one seeds.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a rock fight in between the one seeds. It could be. I think we'll see at least two of the one seeds in.
Mhm.
Um, I would think those two would be Florida, Houston. I would put guarantees on to get in.
Yep.
I actually don't. It depends on Michigan State and a few other things against Auburn, if that was the matchup there, and then who ends up getting out between, you know, Alabama and Duke. That would be my kind of breakdown there. Like, ironically, the first two, I don't like their draws as well to get out of their own regions. So that's the tough question here. Yeah, so those would be the ones to consider. I'm History says pick Auburn, so history's pick is Auburn. Your pick is Florida. I would pick the Houston Cougars for their first
I
ever
think
championship.
I think I would go Houston as well.
Well, you said we Florida just a second ago. Do you have doubts in Florida?
I mean, if I'm pinning them against Houston, if I had to pick between the two, I would pick Houston over Florida.
So what makes you pick Houston over Florida?
More consistent defense.
No, the defense is really, really good. Houston's been runner-up two times in the NCAA tournament in 1983 and 1984. They haven't been back to the Final Four since 2021. It's been a minute also for Florida to get there as well, but it would be an incredible matchup if it was, say, something like that, one way or the other. There's a lot of good teams out there. It's going to be a rock fight one way or the other. We'll just see how it lands at the end of the day. But Maddie, any final thoughts here before we move on? Teams that you think can make a run? Any thoughts like that?
Man, it is such a hard bracket because it's almost difficult not to go chalk.
I
Just
think there's
because
chaos. There's going to be chaos in the bracket. It's
oh,
almost like who do you have in the Final Four?
right.
No, no, no. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like you're saying the chalk is going to be the final. You like the one seeds to make it to the Final Four.
Yeah. Like I said, it's throughout the bracket. It's hard to not just go chalk because the top tier seeds are just elite.
I mean, yeah, I do agree with that. The top seeds are exceptionally elite. Um, like I said, history says pick Auburn.
Mhm.
Auburn should be the team that you pick. Last year, history told us exactly who we should pick, and it was UConn, and it told us UConn, Purdue, or Arizona. Arizona made it far in the tournament. Purdue ended up being the national runner-up. UConn was national champions on the big board. So in big board, we trust Auburn. If we don't listen to the big board, um, I'm like you. I like Houston a lot. I think they're a very good basketball team. And we mentioned that eventually this 2020 or the trend since 2004 was going to break. If you eliminate that, Houston checks every box that Auburn checks. And they've played exceptionally better throughout the year. Even with the head-to-head already with Auburn beating Houston, I can see Houston beating Auburn. So in a rematch, so that would be a big one there. But that would only be in a national championship game since they're literally on completely opposite sides of the bracket. So it would be Duke Houston as the one seeds, and then Auburn Florida in the final four. If the one seeds advance in the final four there. We'll see what happens. Big thing we wanted to mention, the thing we were talking about, 1985, I think is what I told you, was the record. SEC already broke one record. with the NCAA tournament, with as many teams that put in the NCAA tournament against the Big East. 1985, the record was broken for the most teams from a single conference in the Final Four. There were 3 Big East teams in that Final Four in 1985. Can the SEC break that Final Four record this year? I think they have enough teams to do it.
Yeah.
They have 2 teams who are 1 seeds and a couple of 2s that I think can also make a run. Can a 3 like Kentucky maybe make a run? Can we see a lower seed? We'll see how it shapes out. But yeah, guys, this is going to be a heck of a field. It's the biggest March ever, and it has been awesome talking basketball here tonight. Guys, give us your thoughts. Don't take our bracket as gospel. We're going to be wrong somewhere. It's a 1 in quadrillion chance of getting this thing right. There's a lot of matchups that are fascinating. You can look at different ways. Tell us your favorite matchups. Tell us how you think your team's going to do. Drop it in the comment section. Share this video, talking about it, share it with friends. But we'll hang out with you guys here really, really soon. We're going to come back and we're going to talk after Thursday night, and then we'll be back once a week after that, or not once a week, but after each round, and we'll preview the upcoming games. But guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.